Well, we're very excited to be here today, and we're very excited, myself and my colleague Isaac Gornichek, to be talking with you about how to engage your key medical device stakeholders in a compliant virtual technology. That really seems to be the talk track nowadays, is to be able to, how are we going to be able to engage our people? How are we going to be able to collect and get that information? So as we move into this, I'd like to introduce both myself and my colleague. My name is Kim Hale. I'm the VP team lead for business development specific to medical device at Within3. I've been in the medical device arena now for 30 years, the last 8 of those years in the digital side of medical device. And I've been at Within3 now for about 15 months, and I've loved every moment that I've been here. And so, Isaac, I'll turn it over to you.
Hey, thanks, Kim. I've been in and around med device, pharmaceutical sales and marketing for, 21, 22 years or so. I've been in the trenches, rolled up my sleeves. I've been in the OR. I've been in physicians' offices. I've worked arm in arm with marketeers and other directors and so on. So I've been with Within3 now, 9 months, almost 10 months. The time has flown by, literally. And happy to be here today and to present and talk with you all. So thanks, Kim.
Perfect. Well, Isaac, one of the first things I want to talk with you about today is what we've learned over the last 18 to 20 months. It's funny that this slide says then. Then seems like it should be like 50 years ago, right? But this was literally just 18 months ago. So what were we doing 18 months ago or 20 months ago compared to what we're now doing?
Kim, I have no idea. What were we doing 18 months ago? Things have really changed over the last 18 to 20 months. It's incredible when you think of pre-post lockdown. I would even say even pre-COVID, things are starting to change. The climate was really starting to change in the way that we interacted, especially in this industry that we're involved with, right? We're the most highly regulated industry in the world. And so we have a lot of restrictions and so on, and the environment that we're working in, and we have to be fairly fluid. We have to be open and willing to move. But what we really saw then was there weren't a lot of choices out there of what we could do and how we interacted with customers, with both internal and external stakeholders. And I think that's important too, to remember as we talk through this presentation today, that when we talk about interacting with folks and so on, that it's both from an internal standpoint, also external as well. Typically, we saw one-time events, right? That's what we had. We had one event. It would last for a day or two, or maybe 2 or 3 hours, depending on what we were doing and what we were trying to hold and the goals we were trying to accomplish. And then follow-up was typically email, maybe a phone call, eventually text messaging, right? Text messaging was and has been big. It really was a this or that. I would say it was either a live meeting or it was virtual. Rarely was it both. We've gotten a lot better with what we're doing. And I would say that, for instance, the platform that we're using today, this virtual way of interacting and people being able to chat and send questions and thoughts and so on, and that we can interact back. I mean, how great is this, right? That we're able to do it. Virtual was really webcasting. I mean, I think webcasting's been around for, 20 years. I remember when my grandparents could finally webcast and they figured that out. It's like it was Christmas morning. They were so excited and thrilled with the ability to see their grandkids, yet they lived, 1,400 miles away. The big point, that bullet point, though, I think was something we need to make sure we touch on, because, the way that we were interacting was really just promoting exclusivity. And I think, let me explain that, right? There were very few that were invited because the platforms could only handle that, or there were maybe quite a few invited, but yet we didn't hear from very many people. It was oftentimes, you can imagine sitting around the boardroom table with, 15 folks, and we would hear from maybe 2 or 3, majority of the time. So really, what do we see now? And I want to impress upon folks too, remember that where we're coming from, Within3 has about 15 years of experience with this type of interaction. We run thousands of sessions every single year with hundreds of companies. And so we have a really good idea of really what the then was, and now over the 15 years, truly what is today. Well, it's really a thoughtful mix of engagement tools. When you see that, we have a lot of different ways that we can approach, for instance, an advisory board. And how do you want to do it? Should we do it in person? Should we do it in person? Very difficult to do right now. I was on a call yesterday with a company that said, hey, we want to run 4 ad boards. we would love to have done them in person, but we don't think that's going to happen. And we're not planning for that to happen. So we're going to do them virtually. So my question is, well, how are you going to do those virtually? Let's talk about all the different tools that are available. What's also nice now is that we can have these interactions, but then all conversations can extend throughout the year. So it's not just a one and done approach, which I really love, because really you should be able to bring somebody in, whether it's virtually or in person, and then continue that conversation for a long period of time throughout the year to really glean more insights and receive more information and sharing more information back and forth. I think also our views have definitely been expanded. I tell you what, if you're sitting in your narrow lane with your blinders on, you're in trouble, because guess what? There's a lot more ways that we can go about doing things that we, as far as putting on events and so on and so forth. Now, the last bullet point speaks to that. The prior last bullet point is that now we really are promoting folks to be included in these events more so than being excluded. And I think we're expanding our audience, we're expanding our reach, which is great. We're going deeper within a disease state, being able to grab greater KOLs and being able to interact more effectively and more efficiently. So that's a little bit, Kim, about for kind of the then and now. We could probably talk about this all day long, and people all have their opinions of really what the now looks like. But again, I think from our experience, this truly is what we've seen. So now, Kim, tell me a little bit more about these toolkits, right? Everybody has a toolkit. What's a hybrid KOL engagement toolkit look like?
Well, it's interesting. We've been doing this now, Isaac, for 14 years. And what we're learning and what we're trying to help people now to take a look at is not so much the venue, like, are we going to use, a webinar? Are we going to use emails? Are we going to use the boardroom? But really helping them learn how to engage the people that they want to talk with. And right now we have to engage on a virtual platform. So there's a toolkit now that's kind of being developed, and it continues to expand and grow on a daily basis right now. That toolkit literally, as you just talked about 18 months ago, was either live or it was a webinar. That was our choices. Now you can see that that's changed just a little bit, but we still have some of very similar things. We still have our live in-person meetings. Hopefully some of those will be coming back. Isaac, you and I have had the opportunity in the last little while to attend a couple of those live meetings, and it's been great to be back and be able to shake hands with people, have some of that interpersonal relationship building capability that we've missed out on for the last little while. We still have the on-demand, Zoom calls and webinars and things like that. We still have email and telephone, but that's something we're all used to. But what can we do to collect more information, to make sure the information that we are collecting is getting disseminated correctly? It's getting, providing us answers to questions. And a lot of that now can be formed around what we call an asynchronous platform or an overtime discussion. Something that a lot of people just haven't even thought about is the overtime type of discussions where every thought, every word that's written is then transcribed, and you can look at everything that everybody is saying, and you're not having to work around time zones and regions, and people can come in at their convenience and participate in this discussion. That's much easier and is going to give you much more information. And then we can include in those asynchronous discussions any type of webinar, that you would like to have. We can book in those asynchronous discussions with a webinar in the beginning and then one at the end. And then where do we take all that information? How do we actually get those actionable insights out of those overtime discussions? And we do that now through providing executive summaries that gives you the actionable insights. It gives you questions, or it gives you answers to those questions to help make decisions to continue to move, your product forward, your new technique forward, and to ultimately really affect the patients that are out there that are wanting better care and better help. So really what it does is the Within3 Insights Management Platform now, as we're calling it, is really takes in three different things to consider. And I want to talk about this like a three-legged stool. A stool on one leg is not very stable. On two legs, still not very stable. But if you've got three legs, it's extremely stable to the point where you could even stand on it if you needed to reach something on a higher shelf. And so those three areas now is we'll help select people that you want to talk with. Who is it you want to talk with? Why do you want to talk with them? Are you continuing to use the same people you've used for years and years, or is there a new group of people that you would like to engage with? And then we'll help you to connect with those people. We'll help provide a platform that will allow an engagement with them in an overtime discussion that will give you more information than you have ever gotten in a boardroom one-on-one meeting or in a virtual call. And then finally, literally just a few days after your overtime discussion is done, we'll give you that executive summary that provides those actionable insights, provides the answers to the questions you were looking to get. And that comes just days after your overtime discussion is completed, not months, weeks, years after it. And then you're going to be able to share that information with help, which is going to help you make decisions and be able to move forward. So, Isaac, let me just ask you a quick question. When you're considering virtual engagement, what have we seen as people have been looking for new ways to engage with their customers, their KOLs, their patients?
It's a good question. I mean, we talk a lot about this with a lot of people almost daily. I think going back to where you said, geez, how do you get information the fastest? After a session concludes, after a meeting is done, it shouldn't take a month or two to compile the information and pull it together in a format that you then can share to your internal teams or with your external customers or whoever was involved in that. It should be rather quickly. We're used to getting things quickly in the environment that we live, right? I mean, the days of calling somebody, paging them, and then eventually their beeper goes off, and then they finally get back to us. Those are really gone. I guess there are some places that still use that. I don't want to knock that too hard, but for the most part, we're well beyond that. And I would say that really what it boils down to is being more proactive. We have to have a proactive engagement strategy in place. You absolutely have to. If you're reacting to things, you're already behind the eight ball. You're behind others who are a lot more proactive. They're looking for ways to accomplish tasks that they did 18 to 20 months ago, but do it a lot more effectively and a lot more efficiently. They're not necessarily sitting around going, boy, I wish this was circa 2020, 2019 kind of a thing. They're looking forward to the future and really what these expanded engagement opportunities mean that are out there. They truly are embracing these engagement opportunities instead of digging their heels in and going, what, I'm not going to accept it. This isn't something that I want to do. No, typically we see folks really embracing and looking forward to the future. I think there's a lot more updated security and compliance considerations that we have to take into, obviously we have to think about. I think this also lends itself to believe that we have to make sure that we are offering technology to our clients and to our internal teams, to our employees that work really well, that's easy to access, that's easy to navigate, that works well with the products and services that we offer too. I think when I think about security and compliance, that's what I think about too. Of course, I think about the platform. What is the technology? Who produced it? Who manages it on the back end? Are there people constantly managing the conversations that are going back and forth? And I think when I say managing, are they really looking into what the topic of conversation is? Is it on label? Is it off label? How do you control that? I think that all of those are really important things to think about. And then ultimately, I've probably smashed this to bullet point back and forth quite a bit, but it's really planning for the future. Where are you now, and where do you want to go? I mean, really, what does 2022 look like for you? 2023, and so on and so forth. Do you have a 5-year plan? What methodology are you using are you planning to use? And so on. And so are really just at the end of the day, are you out in front of the pack? Are you in it? Or are you behind it? So those are things that I see that we need to consider, Kim.
Yeah, you were talking, Isaac, about the speed of how things are being delivered. I call that the fast food mentality. That's what that's called. We all expect things now at a moment's notice. We expect it right now. We don't want to wait for anything. So
we want it supersized too, right?
Yeah, exactly. Well, let me ask you this then, Isaac. When you're talking about an overtime type of discussion, which is fairly new to a lot of people that are probably listening today, what structure, how does a connect session actually come together, and what does it look like?
And again, good question, because there's a lot of different ways to go about doing this, but what we've seen at Within3 and the thousands of sessions that we've run. It's interesting. We were talking to a company the other day, and they run about 80 advisory boards or so on average per year. Well, we run about 4,000 or so. Probably not that many advisory boards, but we help to run and navigate about anywhere from probably 2,000 on up. I mean, it's a tremendous and incredible number. But what we see that has worked best and most often is that usually starts with a kickoff webcast, lasts for about 45 minutes or so. And during that webcast, we will also launch the async session. So that'll also begin, which will consist of Q&A, insights, discussions. There will be opportunities for people to chat back and forth. You can upload documents, videos. People can annotate documents, share things back and forth. And what's great is that they do this on their time, anytime, any device, wherever they're located in the world. There's no reason to set necessarily a specific time for them to do this. This is just ongoing. Typically day 8, 9, 10, we'll see another webcast. You alluded to this already, that there's usually a bookend approach to these types of sessions. During that webcast, there will be a check-in, final tasks, deliverables, and then really in about 3 or 4 days after that webcast, the session will close. There'll be a results call. And what's nice is that we're looking at now, really having an executive summary within like 6 to 7 days, maybe 7 to 10 days, post-close of these sessions. So that waiting a month, 2 months to get this information, that's so 2019, I guess I should say, right? And that we're now well beyond that. And really what we see is that this structure is working so incredibly well. And a lot of our clients that are using this are really happy about it. Now, Kim, let me ask you this though, because let's get to some questions, right? Opportunities. What opportunities do clients really reference when they assess their virtual engagement strategy? What are you hearing? Share some thoughts with us.
It's interesting because a lot of people thought that over the past 18 months that it's hard to engage with people. It's hard to get the information that we're looking for. But Isaac, there's been a ton of opportunities that have been presented to us as well. Some companies thrived and grew during the last 18 to 20 months, where other companies went backwards. And a lot of it was how they were able to utilize that virtual engagement capability that we've been talking about today. Some of those opportunities are being able to expand your audience on a global level. So, instead of just doing that Zoom call where you have to have somebody that's on the call at 6 a.m., in Los Angeles, and it's 10 o'clock at night in, Australia, or the next day at 10 o'clock in the morning, you don't have to worry about that with an overtime type of discussion. So you can expand the audience that you're talking with. And if you expand your audience, then that automatically means that you're getting more information. You're getting better information than what you have ever gotten before. You alluded to this earlier, Isaac, when you talk about, the Zoom calls and stuff that we have been on in the past, where you invited 10 people, you're hoping that maybe 8 of them are actually going to show up. And when those 8 show up, you may have only 2 or 3 that do the majority of the talking when you wanted to hear from everybody. Now you have that opportunity in an overtime type of discussion where you can hear from everyone. And not only can they think about what they want to say before they say it, they can come back in and add additional thoughts and stuff as well. So we can reach more advisors on a global level. We can gain more actionable insights because everybody's participating, and not just those 2 or 3 that like to do all the talking, kind of like what we're doing here today, but everybody gets to participate, and it just makes it better and easier for everyone. So more diversity, more inclusivity, it's sustainable. We have a better work-life balance. And again, it all comes back around to being able to make it better for the patient. So Isaac, what challenges do your clients have? When they're managing their insights now, that they're getting them, we called it the fast food mentality. They're getting this information quicker and faster. How are they managing all of that?
It's interesting because I hear all kinds of different approaches to this. And remember, there was one company that we were talking to, and we asked them, well, geez, how do you keep track of all the information that is shared during a web call? And they said, well, we have a scribe that we use, and they take notes, and then they share the notes with everybody. And I'm just thinking to myself, but if you weren't on that call and you don't, and those notes were, so, did you really glean all the insights and the information that you really needed to? And if that was the only call that was being done, and then the next step was, hey, let's complete this project, by the end of so-and-so, and you're thinking to myself, you're scrambling, trying to figure out what the heck was even said and talked about. And so these are some of the challenges that we're hearing. Really, what it is it boils down to an insight gap. That's what I'm hearing more than anything. I think that if I had to phrase it, what is the biggest challenge that clients are really facing because they're getting so much information is how do they make sense of this information? How do they disseminate it to the different departments that are involved in their projects for the products and services that they provide? Really, because what is an insight gap? It really is either you're receiving all the information that you need to, or you're not. Even if you are receiving the information, how are you making sense of it? And so there becomes this big gap between. And so we end up having another meeting and another meeting and then another meeting in order to go through and disseminate and share this information. So it's like, what if we had a way that we could share information more effectively and more efficiently and share all that information with everybody? Right. And if we can do that in an effective manner, then my gosh, we're really going to hit the ball out of the park, to use a baseball analogy, every single time. I think it's important. Other challenges that folks really have are selecting the right KOLs. Let's say if we're looking at an event for key opinion leaders, I think it's also about choosing the right venue. It's also about then how do you get access to that, those results that you've just necessarily that you have, right? So I think those are some of the challenges for sure that I see most often anyways.
Well, so you just brought up this next question really, and you kind of already brought this up, is people have been using their same advisors, whoever it might be, KOLs, clinicians, whoever they're, internal steering committees, external people, they've been using the same people for years. They really came from three different areas. They came from agencies helping to provide names and lists of people, lists of KOLs. It came from, heaven forbid, because you and I both been reps in the field, a lot of the KOLs advisors came from rep recommendations. And I got to tell you, some of the people that I would have recommended because they were my golfing buddy are not the people that you want to have on the advisory board. Okay, that's just not, you don't want to use them. And the other way is they just continue, like I said, they continue using the same people year in and year out, and they continue to get the same information. So, Isaac, how do you expand the reach outside of your typical group now? What can be done with that?
It's one of those things you got to ask yourself the question: are you using kind of the old technology, or are you using the new technology that's out and available? A company like Within3, we have products and services where really help to source and select new KOLs and to expand beyond your golfing buddy. It's as good of a golfer and great of a handicap that he or she might have. It's there could be better KOLs out there. And there really are. And I think that's the thing, is that, the way that we approach it is, are you utilizing the various techniques that are available to us now that are looking at, for instance, are you tracking who the rising stars are? Do you have access to these invisible colleges that people are participating in? Are you looking at social? I mean, when you think about social interactions, right, and texting and Twittering, and I mean, all of these different social platforms that are available in the world today, are you as a company, is that where are you able to track and figure out where your KOLs, how and what are they communicating? I think that this is really important, that you're using these types of technologies to then lead to implementing a really correct hybrid virtual strategy, right? We talked about being super proactive. We talked about being able to expand your reach, but I think it's also key to make sure that you have the right approach to get those KOLs that you need. I always worry that we're kind of using the same KOLs, and those KOLs that are dynamic and they're involved and they bring a lot to the table are fantastic. But I also wonder how many of the same KOLs do we use over and over again, but yet we expect these different results, right? Kind of that definition of insanity, doing that same thing over and over, but expecting a different result. And I wonder how we're all guilty of it. I am guilty of it 100%. And so I think we definitely have to take a step back, really. But again, it's that age old question, dude. Are you doing it the old way? Or are you going to do it the new way? And there are new technologies that are out there. So a lot more to share on this too, Kim. But we only have 30 minutes today. So I think let's move on for sure. But let me ask you this now, because this is important, right? So how will companies really rethink the future of engaging with medical device customers globally? Because it's really expanded now, as well as developing their contingency plans. And do they even have a contingency plan? I don't know. We've heard a lot of different takes on this one.
That's the big thing is, are people actually developing a plan? Are they just continuing to use what they've always used in the past? Because it's the old adage, like my dad used to say, I drive a Ford because my dad drives a Ford. You really don't know why you drive a Ford. You just do it because, somebody else, that's just the way things have been done. Webinars, just the way things have been done, live in-person meeting. I had a client tell me the other day, well, we really are not going to be looking at virtual engagement because we're going back to live one-on-one meetings. And I thought to myself, good luck with that. I really hope that works out for you, because unfortunately, it's just not the way things are developing right now. And so we have to have a plan. You have to be thinking about how to engage, but more importantly, how do we actually get the information that we want? And then how do we organize that information in such a way that it's going to benefit our company and it's going to benefit the patients? And so that's really what I would love to everybody to think about, is that three-legged stool that I talked about earlier. You've already now talked about the selection process, selecting the right people, the new people, or just comparing the people you currently have with new groups that are out there. Being able to help select the right clinical trial site and organize the right patients around that. That's vital now to that virtual engagement. Secondly, how do you connect with them? How do you actually engage these people? Is it a phone call? Is it an email? Or is it an overtime type of discussion where it's convenient for people? It's easy for them to come in and connect with. And then finally, how do you get that information? This is probably the part that you talked about, Isaac, that's the most important to me, is that insights gap. It's that gap that the information is not being collected properly. It's not being given out properly. It's very siloed. Only a few certain people can see it. How do we actually take that information and make it work for us? How do we get answers? And that's where the discovery piece of the Within3 platform now comes in, is the ability to be able to take that information and literally within just a matter of a few days, be able to provide you with actionable insights and answers. So that's an insights management platform. As you're building that contingency plan, look for something that has a platform that helps you not only find the right people, be able to engage those people, and then get that information immediately. That really is what's called an insights management platform. And that's what Within3 can be able to provide. So again, we're very excited to be here today. We hope that we were able to make some sense. We hope that we were able to open up some eyes and cause people to maybe to think about some of the new things that are out there and that are available to them. And we appreciate your time very much. So Isaac, thanks for your help today.
Yeah, no problem at all. Thank you, Kim. Thanks everybody for participating and listening. And we're happy to answer questions, and we'll respond to your chats, and we'll get back to you right away. So we're easy to get a hold of.